The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the normal kind of silence you get when you're driving through the desert at night. This was different. There were no passing cars, no trucks in the distance, no insects hitting the windshield. Nothing except the low hum of my engine and the occasional vibration of the road beneath my tires. It was almost 1 o'clock in the morning when I realized I had been driving for nearly 4 hours without seeing a single place that looked open. I was somewhere along the old stretch of Route 66 in Arizona. I wasn't supposed to be there that late. My original plan was simple: drive until I found a cheap motel, get a few hours of sleep, and continue in the morning. But the GPS on my phone had stopped working about 30 minutes earlier. There was no signal. I wasn't particularly worried at first. I'd driven through remote areas before. I knew Route 66 had plenty of long stretches where there was almost nothing around. Then my headlights flickered. Once, twice, and then the engine began to lose power. I pressed the accelerator. Nothing. The car slowed. I looked at the fuel gauge. It was just above empty. Come on. I pulled onto the shoulder and turned the hazard lights on. The desert stretched out in every direction. Dark mountains sat on the horizon, barely visible beneath the moonlight. I got out of the car and opened the hood, even though I had no idea what I was looking for. The engine was hot. I stood there for a moment, listening. That's when I heard something. A faint metallic sound, like someone hitting a piece of metal far away. Clang. I turned toward the sound. Nothing. Clang. It came again. This time I noticed something in the distance. A small red light. At first, I thought it was a radio tower. Then another light appeared. And another. I grabbed my phone and zoomed the camera as far as it would go. It wasn't a tower. It was a sign. A motel sign. I couldn't believe it. I closed the hood and grabbed my flashlight. The motel was probably less than half a mile away. I left the car where it was and started walking. The road was completely empty. After a few minutes, the sign became clearer. Sunset Palms Motel. The letters were faded, and only 3 of them were still illuminated. SUN_ET below the name was a smaller sign. Rooms, vacancy. The word vacancy flickered every few seconds. That should have been the first warning. The motel looked abandoned. There were 2 long buildings facing a cracked parking lot. Most of the windows were dark. Several doors had been covered with plywood. Old cars sat beneath a layer of dust. One of them didn't even have wheels anymore. Yet the neon sign was still working, and there was a light coming from the office. I walked toward it. The front door was unlocked. A small bell rang when I pushed it open. Hello? No answer. Behind the counter was an old wooden desk covered in dust. There was a handwritten registration book sitting on top. I looked around. The walls were covered with photographs. Most of them were old. Families standing beside classic cars. Tourists smiling beneath the Sunset Palms sign. People posing in front of Route 66 signs. The photographs looked like they were from the 1960s and 1970s. Then I noticed something strange. Every photograph had been taken at night. I don't know why that bothered me. Maybe because there were so many of them. Dozens. Every single one showing people standing outside the motel after dark. I heard a noise behind me. I turned around. An old man was standing in the doorway. I nearly jumped. He was probably in his 70s. Thin, gray hair, wearing a brown jacket and an old motel employee badge. Car trouble? He asked. Yeah. He looked past me through the window. You're alone? Yes. He stared at me for several seconds. Then he looked at the registration book. You shouldn't be here tonight. I laughed nervously. I don't really have another option. He didn't smile. What happened to your car? Engine died. How far? About half a mile down the road. He nodded. You can stay here. I felt relieved. How much? $40. That's it. Cash. I pulled my wallet out. He took the money without giving me a receipt. Then he reached underneath the desk and pulled out a key. The metal key had a small plastic tag attached to it. Room 4. He placed it on the counter. Don't go outside after 2. I thought he was joking. Why? He simply looked at the clock. 1:47 a.m. Because that's when they come back. I waited for him to explain. He didn't. Instead, he picked up the registration book and turned it toward me. Sign. I picked up the pen. As I wrote my name, I noticed something. The last entry was dated 3 days earlier. Someone had stayed here. I looked at the name, then at the address, then back at the old man. Do you still get many guests? Not anymore. Then who was this? He closed the book. Room 6. I looked toward the hallway. Is that occupied? His expression changed. Room 6 is not a room you need to worry about. I smiled awkwardly. Okay. He handed me the key. Room 4. I thanked him and walked outside. The hallway smelled like wet wood and something I couldn't identify. Every door had a small number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then 6. I stopped. Room 6 was at the very end. Unlike the other doors, it looked newer. The number had been painted recently, and there was something underneath it, a dark stain, almost like someone had repeatedly scratched the door with their fingernails. I quickly looked away. Room 4 was only a few doors away. I unlocked it. The room was surprisingly clean. There was an old television, a small refrigerator, a bed, a bathroom, nothing unusual. I put my bag down and sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time that night, I felt safe. I checked my phone. Still no signal. The time was 1:58 a.m. I decided to sleep. At exactly 2 a.m., the lights went out. I opened my eyes. The room was completely dark. Then I heard it. 3 slow knocks. From somewhere outside. Knock. 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 I sat up. Another 3 knocks. This time they sounded closer. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. Nothing. Then I heard footsteps. Slow footsteps moving along the hallway. They stopped outside my door. I held my breath. There was silence for several seconds. Then someone whispered from the other side. Room 6. I didn't move. The voice whispered again. Room 6. And then I heard something that made my blood run cold. A door opening. From the end of the hallway. Room 6. I didn't sleep. For several minutes, I stayed completely still, sitting on the edge of the bed with my phone in my hand. The flashlight was still on. I kept staring at the gap underneath the door. Nothing moved. Then I heard the footsteps again. Slow. Dragging. 1 step at a time. They came from the direction of room 6. Step. Pause. Step. Pause. Step. The footsteps stopped directly outside my room. I could hear someone breathing. Not loudly. Just enough for me to know there was someone standing on the other side of the door. I looked at the doorknob. It slowly moved. Down. Then back up. I stopped breathing. The handle moved again. This time harder. I thought about calling the police, but my phone still had no signal. I waited. Nothing happened. Then, without warning, the footsteps moved away. Step. Pause. Step. Pause. Until they disappeared. I remained in that position for almost 10 minutes. Eventually, I convinced myself that whatever was outside had gone. I walked to the window. The curtains were closed. I slowly moved one side aside and looked outside. The parking lot was empty, except for one thing. A car was parked directly opposite my room. An old black sedan. I hadn't seen it when I arrived. Its headlights were off. Its windows were completely dark. I watched it for several seconds. Then the driver's door opened. Nobody got out. The door simply opened, and stayed open. I backed away from the window. At that moment, I heard a knock. Not from the door. From inside the room. I froze. Knock. 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 The sound came from the bathroom. I slowly turned toward it. The bathroom door was closed. I hadn't closed it. I had left it open when I entered. I grabbed the lamp beside the bed. The light still didn't work. Hello? No answer. Another 3 knocks. This time louder. I didn't open the bathroom door. Instead, I grabbed my bag and decided I was leaving. I didn't care about the car. I didn't care about the money. I didn't care if I had to walk 5 miles. I just wanted to get out of that motel. I opened the room door. The hallway was empty. I stepped outside. Then I stopped. Room 6 was open. The door was only a few inches wide. Darkness filled the gap. I remembered what the old man had told me. Don't go outside after 2. And suddenly I understood why. I quickly walked toward the office. The old man's door was closed. I knocked. No response. I knocked again. Sir? Nothing. I opened the door. The office was empty. The registration book was still on the desk. But something had changed. The pages were open. I walked closer. There were new names written underneath mine. Dozens of them. All written in different handwriting. All with different dates. But every single entry had the same room number. Room 6. I turned the page. More names. Another page. More names. I started flipping through the book faster. The entries went back decades. 1968, 1969, 1970, 1971, 1972, 1973, 1974, 1975. My stomach tightened. The newest entry was mine. Except it wasn't. Someone had written my name again. Underneath it was, Room 6, 2:03 a.m. I looked at the clock. 2:03. I dropped the book. Then I heard the bell above the office door ring. I turned around. The old man was standing there. But he wasn't wearing the brown jacket anymore. He was wearing a white shirt. And his face looked completely different. Older. Paler. His eyes were fixed on me. You opened the book. I couldn't speak. He stepped toward me. I told you not to worry about room 6. What is happening? He didn't answer. Instead, he pointed toward the hallway. Go back to your room. No. His expression changed. Go back. I want my car. You can't leave yet. Why? He looked at the clock. 2:05 a.m. Because they haven't finished checking the rooms. I felt my heart pounding. Who? He didn't answer. Then I heard footsteps. Multiple footsteps. Coming from outside. Not one person. Several. They walked across the parking lot. Slowly. The old man turned toward the window. His face went pale. They're early. I looked outside. There were people standing beside the black sedan. 5 of them. Maybe 6. I couldn't tell. They were too far away. But none of them moved. They were simply standing there, looking at the motel. Then one of them slowly raised a hand and pointed directly at the office. The old man grabbed my arm. Back to room 4. I pulled away. Who are they? His voice dropped to a whisper. Guests. Guests? They never checked out. I stared at him. What does that mean? He looked at me. Everyone who stays here after 2 eventually becomes one of them. I didn't wait for another explanation. I ran. Back toward room 4. As I passed room 6, the door suddenly slammed shut. I nearly fell. Then something hit the other side of the door. Once. Twice. 3 times. Like someone was throwing their entire body against it. I kept running. I reached room 4 and locked the door. I pushed the dresser in front of it. Then I heard the footsteps. 1 set. 2. Then many. They moved along the hallway, stopping at each door. Room 1. Silence. Room 2. Silence. Room 3. Silence. Then room 4. My door. Nothing happened. I stood there holding my breath. A shadow appeared underneath the door. Someone was standing outside. Then another shadow. And another. I counted at least 6 pairs of feet. Nobody knocked. Nobody spoke. They simply stood there. For almost a minute. Then all of them walked away. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Finally, I looked through the window. The parking lot was empty again. The black sedan was gone. I thought it was over. Then my phone suddenly vibrated. I nearly dropped it. For the first time all night, I had signal. 1 message. No number. No name. Just a single sentence. You're in the wrong room. I stared at the screen. Then another message appeared. Room 6 is waiting. I looked toward the hallway. The motel was silent again. But then I heard something. A faint sound coming from the wall behind my bed. Scratching. Slowly. Repeatedly. I moved closer. The scratching stopped. I pressed my ear against the wall. Nothing. Then 3 words came through the wall. Very quietly. Almost like someone was whispering directly into my ear. Let me out. I stepped backward. The voice came again. Please. Then I realized something. The wall behind my bed wasn't solid. There was a door hidden behind it, and someone was trapped on the other side. I didn't touch the wall. I didn't even go near it. I stood in the middle of room 4, staring at the wallpaper behind the bed. The voice had stopped. For several seconds, there was nothing. Then scratch, scratch, scratch. Something was moving behind the wall. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. I didn't care about the person behind it. I didn't care about the old man. I didn't care about the motel. I was leaving. I pulled the dresser away from the door and unlocked it. The hallway was empty. I stepped outside. Then I heard the voice again. This time it wasn't behind the wall. It was coming from room 6. Please. I turned. The door to room 6 was open. I could see darkness inside, and standing in the doorway was the old man. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring into room 6. You need to leave, he said. I walked toward him, then opened the front door. He shook his head. I can't. Why? He looked at me. Because you're already registered. I didn't understand. He pointed toward the office. The registration book was lying open on the desk. My name was still there, but now something had been written underneath it. Check in, 1:47 a.m. checkout. I stared at the blank line. What is this? The old man whispered. Nobody leaves until room 6 releases them. I looked at him. What happened to the people who stayed here? He didn't answer. Instead, he walked into room 6. I should have left. I should have run. But something made me follow him. The room smelled different. Old. Wet. Like a basement that had been closed for years. There was no furniture. No bed. No television. No bathroom. Just 4 walls. And hundreds of names scratched into them. Some were barely visible. Others had been carved deeply into the paint. I moved closer. The names went back decades. 1966, 1967, 1968, 1969, 1970, 1971, 1972, 1973, and then I saw mine. It had already been carved into the wall. My name, 2026. I stepped backward. No, the old man stood behind me. I tried to warn you. Who did this? He looked at the wall. Room 6. That's impossible. You're right. He paused. Room 6 isn't a room. I looked at him. What? He pointed toward the floor. There was a small metal hatch underneath the old carpet. He lifted it. A narrow staircase disappeared into darkness. I didn't want to go down, but then I heard something. A car engine. Outside. I ran toward the window. My car was sitting in the parking lot. The headlights were on. The engine was running. I could see the driver's door. It was open. How? The old man didn't answer. Then I heard my own voice coming from the hallway. Help me. I froze. It sounded exactly like me. The old man whispered, Don't answer it. My voice came again. Please help me. It came from room 4, then from room 3, then room 2, then room 1. My voice was moving through the motel, getting closer. The old man grabbed my shoulder. Now what? Run. We ran toward the office. The front door was open. For the first time that night, I could see the highway. There were headlights in the distance. A truck. I ran outside. The old man didn't follow. I turned around. He was standing in the doorway. Come with me. He shook his head. I can't. Why? He looked at room 6. Because I checked in a long time ago. The truck was getting closer. I ran toward the highway. I waved my arms. The truck slowed. The driver stopped. I climbed into the passenger seat. Please, I said. Just drive. The driver looked at me. Then he looked at the motel. His expression changed. You stayed there? I couldn't answer. He stared at me for several seconds. Then he locked the doors. How long? What? How long were you inside? I looked at the clock on the dashboard. 3:12 a.m. About an hour. The driver didn't say anything. He just started driving. After several minutes, I finally asked him, Do you know that motel? He nodded. Everyone around here knows it. What happened there? He kept his eyes on the road. Fire. When? 1966. I felt cold. What fire? He looked at me. The motel burned down. I laughed nervously. No, it's still there. He didn't respond. I pulled out my phone. I had no signal again, but I opened the camera. There was a photograph I had taken earlier. The motel sign. Sunset Palms Motel. I zoomed in. My stomach dropped. The sign didn't say Sunset Palms. It said Sunset Palms, 1966, and beneath it was a smaller line. Closed after fire. I looked at the driver. Stop the truck. He didn't. Stop. He finally pulled over. I jumped out. I turned around. There was nothing behind us. Just an empty stretch of Route 66. No motel. No neon sign. No parking lot. Nothing. I stood there for several minutes, trying to understand what had happened. Eventually, the driver took me to a gas station. The police were called. They searched the area where I said the motel had been. They found nothing. No building. No sign. No tire tracks. Nothing. But there was one thing they found. My car. It was parked exactly where I had left it. The engine was still running. The driver's door was open. And on the passenger seat was the motel key. Room 4. I never drove Route 66 again. For months, I convinced myself that the whole thing had been some kind of hallucination caused by exhaustion. Then, about 6 months later, I received an envelope in the mail. There was no return address. Inside was a single photograph. It showed the Sunset Palms Motel. The picture was old, probably from the 1960s. There were several people standing outside. Families, travelers, motel guests, and behind them was the old man. The same man I had met that night. But that wasn't what frightened me. I was standing beside him, wearing the same clothes I had been wearing that night. I was looking directly at the camera. On the back of the photograph, someone had written, Room 6IS still waiting. I threw the photograph away. The next morning, it was back on my kitchen table. I burned it. The next day, it was there again. I eventually moved, changed my phone number, stopped talking about the motel. For years, nothing happened. Until last month. I was cleaning an old box in my garage when I found something I had completely forgotten about. The motel key. Room 4. I don't know how it got there. I had never taken it from the police. I was about to throw it away when I noticed something scratched into the back of the key. Not room 4. Not room 6. A date. August 21st, 2026. That's today. And that's why I'm writing this down. Because about 10 minutes ago, I heard 3 knocks on my front door. Knock. 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 I didn't answer. Then someone whispered from outside. Room 6. I looked through the window. There was nobody there. But on my doorstep was a small plastic motel key tag. I already know what number is written on it. 6. And underneath the number, someone has written 4 words. Check out IS Never Possible.